The moment Jake had been dreading finally arrived on a Tuesday morning. Carolyn was 6 months pregnant by human standards, though Dr. Chun estimated the baby would arrive much sooner due to the accelerated Zalarian development timeline. They could no longer hide the truth from their respective governments. Jake sat in his private office, staring at the encrypted message he prepared for Colonial Command. Beside him, Carolyn held a similar message intended for the Zalarian court. Both communications contained detailed medical reports, genetic analyses, and explanations of how the impossible pregnancy had occurred. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked, his finger hovering over the transmission button. Carolyn nodded, though her face showed the strain of the past weeks. "We can't wait any longer. Soon I won't be able to hide the pregnancy even if I wanted to." They sent the messages simultaneously, knowing that within hours, the news would reach the highest levels of both governments. Then they waited. The response from Colonial Command came first. Admiral Sarah Thompson's face appeared on the secure communication screen, her expression a mixture of amazement and concern. "Captain Miller, I've read your report 3 times, and I'm still having trouble accepting what you're telling me. You're saying that Princess Carolyn is pregnant with your child?" "Yes, Admiral. Dr. Ching's medical reports confirm it. The pregnancy is stable and progressing normally despite the interspecies nature. The scientific implications alone are staggering," Admiral Thompson continued. "But the political ramifications could be even more significant. How has the princess's government responded?" "We sent our message to the Zalarian court at the same time we contacted you. We haven't heard back yet. Captain, I need you to understand something. This pregnancy changes everything about our relationship with the Zalarian Empire. If King Dexver reacts badly, we could be looking at a war we're not prepared for." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What are you recommending, Admiral?" "For now, maintain your current position and wait for the Zalarian response. But I'm dispatching a medical team and a diplomatic envoy to your location. Dr. Rachel Williams from the Colonial Science Institute will want to study the pregnancy, and Ambassador David Clark will need to assess the political situation." "Respect, Admiral. My wife isn't a laboratory specimen. Any medical examinations will need her consent." Admiral Thompson's expression softened slightly. "Of course, Captain. But you must understand that this pregnancy represents the first confirmed case of interspecies reproduction in human history. The scientific community will have questions." The transmission ended, leaving Jake and Carolyn alone with their thoughts. They didn't have to wait long for the Zalarian response. Ambassador Velther's image appeared on the screen, but his usual composed demeanor was replaced by visible agitation. Behind him, Jake could see other Zalarian officials arguing in the background. "Captain Miller," Velther began, his voice tight with stress, "we have received your message regarding Princess Carolyn's claimed pregnancy. The royal court is divided on how to interpret this information." "It's not a claim, Ambassador. It's a verified medical fact." "Perhaps. But there are those who believe that human medical intervention has been used to create this condition artificially. They see this as evidence of human deception and manipulation." Carolyn stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of her royal heritage. "Ambassador, you may tell my father that I carry his grandchild willingly and honestly. No human intervention was needed or used. Princess, your father's reaction has been ... intense. He demands your immediate return to Zalaria for what he calls proper medical examination. He refuses to accept that you could be pregnant through natural means." "And if I refuse to return?" Velther's expression grew grave. "The king has declared that any attempt to keep you from returning home will be considered an act of war against the Zalarian Empire." Jake felt his blood run cold. He's threatening war over this. "Captain, you must understand the position this puts King Dexver in. He publicly declared his daughter defective and gave her away to cement an alliance. If she produces an heir, while under human protection, it suggests that either his judgment was wrong or that humans have somehow deceived him. Neither option is acceptable to his pride. So what are you suggesting? The princess must return to Zelaria immediately. She will be examined by royal physicians, and if the pregnancy is confirmed to be natural, she will be welcomed back into the royal family with full honors. Kiralin's laugh was bitter. And if they decide the pregnancy is somehow artificial or unnatural, Veltha's silence was answer enough. They'll declare it an abomination and have me executed, Kirillin continued, along with my unborn child. Princess, please, your father is not unreasonable. He simply needs to understand what has happened. My father stopped being reasonable years ago, Kirillin replied. I won't return to Zelaria to face his judgment. This child is innocent, and I won't let his pride endanger her life. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Jake and Kirillin staring at a blank screen. Well, Jake said quietly, that went about as badly as we expected. Worse, Kirillin corrected. I know my father. He'll see this as a personal attack on his authority. He won't let it go. Over the next few days, the situation escalated rapidly. Intelligence reports indicated that Zelarian military forces were mobilizing near the border systems. King Dexver had reportedly declared that the human colonies were harboring stolen Zelarian property and that military action might be necessary to retrieve it. The human response was swift but measured. Admiral Thompson's promised medical team and diplomatic envoy arrived aboard the cruiser Endeavour, along with a small fleet of escort vessels. The presence of human military ships in the system sent a clear message that Colonial Command was taking the situation seriously. Dr. Rachel Williams was a brilliant xenobiologist who approached Kirillin's pregnancy with scientific fascination rather than political concern. Her examinations confirmed everything Dr. Chun had documented, while also revealing new details about the baby's development. The genetic integration is remarkable, Dr. Williams explained to the assembled group. The child appears to have inherited beneficial traits from both species, while avoiding most of the potential compatibility issues. It's as if the genetic combination was designed to work together. What does that mean for the baby's future? Jake asked. She'll likely have enhanced physical capabilities from both genetic lines. Zelarian longevity and crystalline skin properties combined with human adaptability and immune system strength. She may also have mental capabilities that exceed both parent species. Ambassador David Clark was less optimistic about the political implications. King Dexver's position is becoming increasingly unstable. Our intelligence suggests that his own nobles are beginning to question his judgment. Some see his reaction to the pregnancy as proof that he's no longer fit to rule. Could that work in our favor? Pete asked. Possibly. But it also makes him more dangerous. A desperate ruler is unpredictable, and King Dexver has access to weapons that could devastate human colonies. That evening, as Jake and Kirillin prepared for bed, she suddenly stopped and placed her hand on her swollen belly. Jake, something's wrong. The baby. She's moving differently. Dr. Chun was in the medical bay within minutes, running her scanners over Kirillin's abdomen. Her expression grew concerned as she read the results. The baby's heart rate is elevated, and there are signs that labor might be beginning. This is much earlier than we expected, even accounting for the accelerated timeline. Is she going to be okay? Jake asked, taking Kirillin's hand. I don't know. We're in uncharted territory here. But I think we need to prepare for the possibility that this baby is coming soon. As if to emphasize the point, Kirillin suddenly doubled over in pain, her crystalline skin flushing with stress. Get her to the medical bay, Dr. Chun ordered. This baby isn't waiting for politics to sort itself out. Jake helped his wife to the medical bay, knowing that their daughter was about to be born into a universe that was already at war over her existence. Jake's decision to stay on Zarian 7 transformed everything about life on the forgotten mining world. Within days of his friend's departure, he had begun working alongside Zara to understand the complex problems facing the planet's population. What he discovered shocked him more than any enemy weapon ever could. The people of Zarian 7 lived in conditions that would have been considered criminal on Earth. The mining settlements were overcrowded, unsanitary, and dangerous. Workers toiled in the deep mines for 16 hours a day, extracting valuable minerals while breathing toxic fumes and risking cave-ins. The food was barely nutritious, the water was contaminated, and medical care was almost non-existent. This is how the Empire treats its people? Jake asked Zara as they toured one of the worst settlements. Around them, Vorthan families huddled in makeshift shelters, their faces gaunt with hunger and exhaustion. "These are not considered real people by the Empire," Zara replied, her voice heavy with shame. "They are criminals, exiles, and outcasts. The Empire sees them as disposable tools, useful only for extracting resources." Jake watched a group of children playing in the dirt, their clothes torn and dirty. On Earth, even the poorest communities had basic social services, schools, and health care. Here, these children had nothing but each other and the slim hope of surviving another day. "We can change this," Jake said, the determination in his voice surprising even himself. Zara looked at him with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "How? I have been trying to improve conditions for months, but the Empire's bureaucracy moves slowly. Every request for better equipment or supplies gets lost in endless paperwork." "Then we stop asking for permission," Jake replied. "We start making changes ourselves." Over the following weeks, Jake began implementing ideas he had learned from human history and military organization. He started with the simplest problems first, teaching the miners how to organize themselves into more efficient work groups. By dividing the labor differently and using better communication systems, they could extract the same amount of minerals in 12 hours instead of 16. "This is remarkable," said Jorik, Zara's military advisor, as he reviewed the production. Reports: "Output has increased by 20%, but the workers are actually healthier and happier." "Happy workers are productive workers," Jake explained. "When people feel valued and respected, they perform better." It is a simple concept, but one that many leaders forget. Zara watched Jake work with growing admiration. He moved among the people with an ease that she had never seen in a leader before. He did not order or command. He listened and suggested. He treated the lowest mine worker with the same respect he would show an emperor, and the people responded to that respect with loyalty and enthusiasm. "Where did you learn to do this?" she asked him one evening as they reviewed plans for a new water purification system. "From watching good leaders and bad leaders," Jake replied. "I learned that true leadership is not about making people obey you. It is about making them want to follow you. You inspire people by showing them that you care about their welfare, not just their productivity." Zara found herself thinking about her own leadership style. She had been trained to rule through authority and tradition, to expect obedience because of her royal blood. But Jake's approach was creating results that her traditional methods had never achieved. "Teach me," she said suddenly. Jake looked up. From the plans they were studying. "Teach you what?" "How to be the kind of leader you are talking about," Zara replied. "I want to learn how to inspire people instead of just commanding them." What followed was an intensive education that changed both of them. Jake shared everything he knew about human leadership principles, about building trust and creating shared purpose. He taught Zara how to listen actively, how to make people feel heard and valued, and how to turn a group of individuals into a unified team. Zara, in turn, taught Jake about Vorthan culture, history, and technology. She showed him how the Empire's political systems worked, where the real power lay, and how decisions were made in the capital. Jake began to understand that the war between humans and Vorthans was not just about territory or resources. It was about two completely different ways of understanding society and leadership. "Your people fight as individuals," Zara observed after Jake had described human military tactics. "Each soldier is trained to think for themselves, to adapt to changing situations. Our soldiers are trained to follow orders without question, to maintain rigid formations even when they are failing. That is why humans have been winning battles against superior numbers," Jake realized. We are not necessarily better fighters. We are just more flexible. As their partnership deepened, so did their personal relationship. Jake found himself drawn to Zara's intelligence and passion for justice. She had a mind that could grasp complex problems and find creative solutions, but she also had a heart that genuinely cared about the welfare of her people. Under her tough exterior, she was vulnerable and lonely, carrying the weight of her exile with dignity that impressed him more each day. Zara, for her part, discovered in Jake a kindness and strength that she had never encountered in Vorten males. He did not see her infertility as a weakness or failure, but as simply one characteristic among many. He valued her for her mind, her courage, and her compassion. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen and appreciated for who she was rather than what she could produce. Their work on Zarian 7 began to attract attention from other outer colonies. Word spread about the remarkable improvements in living conditions and productivity, and other exile communities began sending delegations to learn about their methods. Jake and Zara found themselves teaching their leadership principles to administrators from across the Empire's frontier. "This is dangerous," Jorg warned Zara during one of their private meetings. "If the Imperial authorities realize that you are implementing unsanctioned changes, they will investigate. If they discover the human, then we will deal with that when it happens," Zara replied, though she knew the risks were real. "I cannot go back to watching my people suffer when I know there is a better way." Jake had been thinking about the same problem. He had established a secret communication network that allowed him to stay in contact with human military intelligence, providing them with information about Vorten troop movements and strategic plans. But he was careful to focus on intelligence. That would prevent unnecessary battles, rather than information that would help humans launch attacks. "I want to prevent a war, not win one," he explained to Zara when she discovered his communication activities. "Both our peoples are going to suffer if this conflict continues to escalate. Do you think peace is possible?" Zara asked. Jake considered the question carefully. "I think it is possible if the right people are in charge on both sides. People who understand that strength comes from cooperation, not conquest." As the months passed, their success on Zarian 7 became impossible to ignore. The planet that had once been considered the worst posting in the Empire was now one of the most productive and stable. Other colonies were adopting their methods, and the improvements were spreading across the Outer Rim, but their success also brought them to the attention of people who were not pleased with change. Prince Kale, now firmly established as heir to the throne, began receiving reports about his exiled sister's unusual activities. The military high command was troubled by the departure from traditional methods, and various court officials were questioning whether Princess Zara was becoming too independent. "Change always threatens those who benefit from the old ways," Jake told Zara when she shared her concerns about the growing attention. "The question is whether we have built something strong enough to survive their opposition." Zara looked out over the thriving settlement that had grown around their fortress. Children played in clean streets. Workers returned home at reasonable hours to families that had enough food, and the air itself seemed cleaner and more hopeful than it had been when she first arrived. "Whatever happens," she said, "we have proven that there is a better way. We have shown that people can live with dignity and purpose, regardless of their past or their biology. That knowledge cannot be taken away." Jake nodded, but he could see the worry in her golden eyes. They had built something beautiful together, but they both knew that beautiful things were often the first targets of those who feared change. The storm was coming, and they would need all their strength to weather it. Jake spent the next 3 days recovering in the medical facility, learning more about his strange situation with each passing hour. The Vorten medical technology was far more advanced than anything humans had developed, healing his injuries with treatments that seemed almost magical. But it was not the technology that fascinated him most. It was Princess Zara herself. She visited him every day, bringing food and asking questions about human society. At first, Jake was cautious, remembering his training about revealing information to the enemy. But as their conversations continued, He began to realize that Zara was nothing like the cruel alien overlords that human propaganda described. She was intelligent, curious, and surprisingly kind. "Tell me about your world," she said during one of their meetings, settling into a chair beside his bed. "What is Earth like?" Jake thought carefully before answering. "It is beautiful," he said. Finally, blue oceans, green forests, white clouds. "Very different from this place." Zara nodded, her golden eyes distant. "I grew up on the capital world of our empire. It was beautiful, too, with crystal spires that reached toward the stars. But beauty does not always mean happiness." There was something sad in her voice that made Jake want to ask more questions, but he sensed that she was not ready to share her story yet. Instead, he told her about Earth's seasons, about rain and snow, and the feeling of grass beneath bare feet. She listened with the attention of someone who had forgotten what it felt like to dream of other worlds. Lisa and Ben recovered more slowly than Jake, but they were soon able to join the conversations. Ben, who had always been good with languages, began learning basic Vorthen words from the medical staff. Lisa, with her engineering background, became fascinated by the alien technology around them. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered to Jake. One evening when they were alone, "Their power systems are at least 50 years ahead of ours. If we could bring this technology back to Earth, ... We are not thieves," Jake replied firmly. "These people saved our lives." "These people are the enemy," Lisa reminded him. "Do not forget that." But Jake was finding it harder and harder to think of Zara as an enemy. During their 4th day of recovery, she took him on a tour of her fortress, showing him the command center where she governed the planet. He was surprised to see how efficiently she ran the operation, managing everything from mining quotas to food distribution with skill that impressed him. "You are a good leader," he told her as they stood on a balcony overlooking the planet's main settlement. "Your people seem to respect you." Zara laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "These are not my people by choice. They are exiles and criminals, sent here because they have nowhere else to go. Just like me." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Though he suspected he already knew part of the answer, Zara was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dusty landscape. "I was supposed to rule an empire," she said finally. "I was trained from birth to be an empress, to lead my people to glory among the stars. But I failed in the one thing that mattered most." "What was that?" "I cannot have children," Zara said simply. "In our society, a ruler who cannot produce heirs is worthless. So they sent me here to this forgotten world, to live out my days in exile." Jake felt a surge of anger on her behalf. "That is stupid," he said bluntly. "Your worth as a leader has nothing to do with whether you can have children. You are intelligent, skilled, and your people clearly trust you. What more could an empire want?" Zara turned to look at him, surprise evident on her face. "You truly believe that?" "Of course I do," Jake replied. "On Earth, we judge our leaders by their actions, not their biology. Some of our greatest leaders never had children. It did not make them less capable." "Your people think very differently than mine," Zara said softly. "Maybe that is not a bad thing," Jake replied. Their conversations continued over the following days, ranging from philosophy to military tactics to the nature of leadership itself. Jake found himself sharing stories about human history, about leaders who had risen from humble beginnings to change the world. Zara told him about Vorthen culture, about the rigid hierarchy that had shaped her life, and the weight of expectations that had eventually crushed her dreams. "I sometimes wonder what I could have accomplished if I had been born into your society," she said one evening as they walked through the fortress gardens. "Without the burden of bloodlines and succession, you still can accomplish great things." Jake told her, "Your exile does not have to be the end of your story." Zara smiled at that, the first truly happy expression he had seen from her. "You have an interesting way of looking at the world, Jake Morrison." As the days passed, Jake began to notice changes in himself. He found himself looking forward to his conversations with Zara, enjoying the way her mind worked and the insights she shared. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, combining wisdom with vulnerability in a way that drew him like a magnet. Lisa and Ben, meanwhile, were growing restless. They had been prisoners, however comfortable, for over a week. They wanted to find a way to escape and return to human space with the intelligence they had gathered. Jake understood their urgency, but he found himself reluctant to leave. "We need to start planning our escape," Lisa said during one of their private meetings. "The princess has been kind to us, but we cannot stay here forever. We have vital information about Vorthan defenses that could save human lives." "I know," Jake replied, though the thought of leaving made his chest tight with an emotion he did not want to examine too closely. "Do you?" Ben asked, studying Jake's face carefully. "Because you seem pretty comfortable here." Jake started to deny it, then stopped. His friends deserve honesty. "She is not what I expected," he said finally. "None of this is what I expected. She is still a Vorthan," Lisa pointed out. "And we are still at war, are we?" Jake asked. "Or are we just two species that never learned to talk to each other?" The question hung in the air between them, unanswered and troubling. Jake knew that his friends were right about their duty, but he also knew that something important was happening here. His conversations with Zara had opened his eyes to possibilities he had never considered before. The next morning, Zara came to him with news that would force him to make a choice. "I have been in contact with my military advisors," she said. "They are pressuring me to turn you over to the Imperial authorities for interrogation. I have been able to delay them so far, but I cannot protect you much longer." Jake felt his heart sink. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that if you want to escape, now is the time," Zara replied. "I can arrange for a ship to take you to the edge of the system. From there, you should be able to reach human space." It was the chance he had been waiting for, the opportunity to complete his mission and return home. But as he looked at Zara's face, seeing the sadness she was trying to hide, Jake realized that he did not want to leave. Not yet. "What if I stayed?" he asked. Zara's eyes widened. "You cannot stay. It is too dangerous. If the Imperial authorities discover you are here, then we will have to make sure they do not discover me," Jake said. "You said yourself that this planet is full of exiles and outcasts. One more will not be noticed." "But why would you want to stay?" Zara asked, though something in her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Jake took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would change everything. "Because I think you are right. I think our peoples have never learned to talk to each other. Maybe it is time someone tried to change that." Zara stared at him for a long moment, and Jake could see the hope and fear warring in her golden eyes. "It would be incredibly dangerous," she said finally. "The best things usually are," Jake replied. That evening, he watched his friend's ship disappear into the starry sky, carrying with it his connection to the life he had known. Lisa and Ben had not understood his decision, but they had respected it. They would tell his superiors that he had died in the crash, giving him the freedom to start over. As he stood beside Zara on the fortress balcony, watching the stars wheel overhead, Jake felt something he had not experienced in years. He felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Lieutenant Jake Morrison gripped the control stick of his reconnaissance ship as warning alarms screamed around him. The meteor storm had come out of nowhere, turning what should have been a routine patrol into a fight for survival. Chunks of rock and ice hammered against the hull, each impact sending shockwaves through the small vessel. "Hull breach in Section 3, called out Sergeant Lisa Adams from her position at the engineering station. Her fingers flew over the controls, trying to seal the rupture before they lost too much atmosphere. "I can patch it, but we need to get out of this storm now." Corporal Ben Hayes worked frantically at the navigation console, his face pale with concentration. "The storm is too thick, sir. I cannot get a clear reading on safe passage. We are flying blind." Jake felt the ship shudder as another massive chunk of debris struck them. The lights flickered, and he could hear the groaning of metal under stress. They were in serious trouble, and he knew it. The Zarian system was supposed to be empty, except for some minor mining operations. But the meteor field was far more dangerous than their intelligence had suggested. "There," Ben suddenly shouted, pointing at his screen. "I see a gap in the storm. If we can reach it ... Jake did not wait for him to finish. He threw the ship into a sharp turn, pushing the engines beyond their safety limits. The gap looked impossibly narrow, but it was their only chance. Behind them, the storm raged like an angry beast, while ahead lay the unknown dangers of an alien star system. They almost made it. The ship squeezed through the gap with meters to spare, but the strain had been too much for the damaged hull. Jake heard the terrible sound of metal tearing, felt the ship lurch as critical systems failed. The main engines died first, followed by life support, then artificial gravity. "We are going down," he announced, his voice steady despite the chaos. Around them, brace for impact. The planet below them was an ugly brown and gray world, covered in dust and rocky outcroppings. Jake had just enough power left to aim for what looked like a relatively flat area, though he knew the landing would be rough. The ship hit the surface hard, bounced twice, then skidded to a stop in a cloud of alien dust. For a moment, nobody moved. The silence after the crash felt strange after hours of alarms and shouting. Then Lisa groaned and pushed herself up from her station, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. "Everyone alive?" Jake asked, checking his own body for injuries. His left arm hurt, but nothing seemed broken. "I think so," Ben replied, though he was holding his ribs carefully. "But we have bigger problems. The communication array is completely destroyed, and life support is failing fast." Jake looked at the readings on his damaged console. The planet's atmosphere was toxic to humans, filled with sulfur compounds that would kill them within hours. Their emergency suits would only last so long, and with no way to call for help, they were trapped. "How long do we have?" he asked Lisa. She studied her instruments, her face grim. "Maybe 6 hours if we stay in the ship, less if we go outside." Jake nodded, accepting their fate with the calm that had made him a good soldier. They had known the risks when they signed up for reconnaissance work in hostile territory. At least they had gathered valuable intelligence about Vorthan defenses before the storm hit. Their sacrifice would not be completely meaningless. What they did not know was that their crash had been detected by sensors on the planet's surface. In a fortress built into the side of a mountain, Princess Zara stood before a bank of monitors, watching the strange ship that had fallen from the sky. Her military advisor, Commander Jork, stood beside her, his face showing the typical Vorthan mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "It appears to be a small reconnaissance vessel," Jork said, studying the readings. "The design is unfamiliar, but the technology level seems primitive." Zara watched the ship on the screen, noting how it had managed to survive a crash that should have destroyed it completely. The construction was different from Vorthan ships, more angular, and somehow more practical. She found herself wondering about the beings inside it. "Any signs of life?" she asked. "The sensors detect 3 life forms," Jork replied. "Their biological signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be oxygen-breathing carbon-based life forms, but the atmospheric conditions here will kill them soon." Zara felt something stir in her chest, an emotion she had not experienced in the months since her exile. These unknown beings were dying, and she had the power to save them. According to Vorthan military doctrine, any unknown ship should be destroyed or their crews captured for interrogation. But something about the situation felt different to her. "Prepare a rescue team," she ordered. Jork looked at her in surprise. "Princess, the protocols are clear. Unknown vessels in our territory should be treated as potential threats." "They are dying," Zara said simply. "Whatever threat they might pose, they cannot do anything if they are dead." "But Princess, if these beings are hostile ... Then we will deal with that when the time comes, Zara interrupted. I will not watch helpless creatures die when I have the power to prevent it. Jorik clearly disagreed, but he was too well trained to argue with a member of the royal family. He began preparing the rescue operation. Though his reluctance was obvious in every movement, the rescue team reached the crashed ship just as Jake was beginning to feel the effects of the toxic atmosphere. His emergency suit was running low on oxygen, and he could see that Lisa and Ben were in even worse condition. When the airlock suddenly opened and strange figures in environmental suits appeared, he thought he might be hallucinating. The aliens were tall and graceful, with purple skin visible through their helmet visors. They moved with quick efficiency, attaching breathing apparatus to the humans and loading them onto some kind of floating transport. Jake tried to resist, but his body was too weak from oxygen deprivation to fight back. He awoke in what was clearly a medical facility, though the equipment looked nothing like human technology. The air was clean and breathable, and he could see Lisa and Ben recovering in beds nearby. A tall figure stood beside his bed, and Jake got his first clear look at. A VOR and dot, she was beautiful in an alien way, with large golden eyes and features that seemed both delicate and strong. Her purple skin had a slight shimmer to it, and her hair was a deeper shade of blue than the ocean. But it was her expression that caught Jake's attention. She looked at him with genuine curiosity rather than hostility, as if he were a puzzle she wanted to solve. "You are awake," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that Jake found surprisingly pleasant. "I am Princess Zara. You are safe now." Jake tried to sit up, but found his body still weak from the ordeal. "My crew," he managed to say. "They are recovering as you are," Zara replied. "You were very close to death when my people found you." "Thank you," Jake said, meaning it completely. "You saved our lives." Zara tilted her head slightly, studying him with those golden eyes. "What are you? Your species is not in our databases." Jake realized he was face to face with the enemy, but this alien had just saved his life. The situation was more complex than any training had prepared him for. "We are humans," he said carefully. "We come from a world called Earth." "Humans," Zara repeated, as if testing the word. "Are there many of you?" "Enough," Jake replied, not wanting to give away too much information. Zara seemed to understand his caution, and she smiled slightly. It was a surprisingly warm expression. That made Jake realize this alien was not what he had expected at all. She had saved them when she could have left them to die, and now she was treating them as guests rather than prisoners. "Rest now," she said. "We will have time to talk more when you are stronger." As she left the medical bay, Jake found himself wondering about this Princess Zara. She was clearly important, living in what seemed to be a fortress, but there was something sad about her that he could not quite identify. She had saved their lives, and for that he was grateful. But he also knew that eventually he would have to find a way to escape and return to human space with the intelligence they had. Gathered. What he did not know was that this meeting would change both their lives forever, setting in motion events that would reshape the galaxy itself. Princess Zara stood in the center of the grand medical chamber, her purple skin pale under the harsh white lights. The Royal Medical Council surrounded her in a perfect circle, their faces showing the same expression they might wear when examining a broken machine. She had known this day would come, but knowing something and living through it were completely different things. Dr. Vex, the chief medical officer, held the scanning device that had just sealed her fate. The small silver instrument contained all the proof the Empire needed to destroy her future. His 3 eyes blinked slowly as he read the results for the 3rd time, as if hoping the numbers would change. They never did. "Princess Zara of the House of Theron," Dr. Vex began, his voice echoing in the massive chamber. "The deep genetic scans confirm what the preliminary tests suggested. Your reproductive system shows complete cellular breakdown. There is no possibility of natural conception, and even our most advanced medical procedures cannot repair the damage. Zara felt the words hit her like physical blows. She had suspected this truth for months, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that terrified her. In Vorthan society, a ruler's worth was measured by one simple thing: their ability to produce strong heirs who would continue the bloodline. Without that ability, she was nothing more than a pretty decoration. "Are you certain?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Her voice remained steady, despite the storm raging. Inside her chest, "We have run every test known to our science," Dr. Vex replied, not meeting her eyes. "We have consulted with medical experts from across the Empire. The result is always the same. You are completely infertile, Princess. There is no cure, no treatment, no hope of change." The silence that followed felt heavier than the gravity of 3 suns. Zara could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, each beat counting down the seconds until her life as she knew it would end. She had been trained since childhood to rule the Vorthan Empire, to lead their people to glory among the stars. She spoke 6 languages, could pilot any ship in the fleet, and had studied military tactics until she could defeat seasoned generals in war games. None of that mattered now. "I must inform the Emperor immediately," Dr. Vex continued, already reaching for his communication device. "The succession laws are clear. A ruler who cannot produce heirs cannot hold the throne." Zara watched him make the call that would change everything. Her father, Emperor Theron, listened to the report with the same cold expression he wore during military briefings. She had always known he was a hard man, but she had hoped that blood might mean something when the moment came. It did not. "Very well," the Emperor said through the communicator, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Princes, Zara is hereby removed from the line of succession. Prince Kale will be named heir apparent within the hour. Prepare the ceremony." The words felt unreal, like something happening to someone else. Zara had known Prince Kale, her younger brother, would benefit from her fall, but she had not expected it to happen so quickly. There would be no time to prepare, no chance to say goodbye to the life she had planned. One moment she was the future of the Empire, the next she was nothing. "What happens to me now?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. Dr. Vex looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "The Emperor has made arrangements. You will be given a governorship in the outer colonies, a place where you can still serve the Empire, but away from the capital." Zara knew what that meant. Exile. They were sending her as far from the throne as possible, to some forgotten world where she could not embarrass the royal family or complicate the succession. She would be given a meaningless title and expected to disappear quietly into history. The next few hours passed in a blur of humiliation and loss. Palace servants packed her belongings while she sat in her chambers, staring out at the city she would never rule. News of her removal spread quickly through the court, and she could see the way people looked at her now. Yesterday she had been their future empress. Today she was a curiosity at best, a source of pity at worst. Prince Kale came to see her before she left, his face showing what he probably thought was sympathy. He had always been smaller than her, weaker in both body and mind, but now he would inherit everything that should have been hers. The unfairness of it burned in her chest like acid. "I am sorry, sister," he said, though his eyes showed more relief than sadness. "I never wanted things to happen this way." "But you are not sorry enough to refuse the throne," Zara replied, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. Kale looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "The Empire needs a strong leader, someone who can ensure the bloodline continues. I have a duty to our people." "And what duty do I have?" Zara asked. "What purpose does a barren princess serve?" "You will find a new purpose," Kale said, backing toward the door. "The outer colonies need good leadership. You can still serve the Empire, just in a different way." After he left, Zara sat alone in her empty chambers, thinking about the irony of her situation. She had been born with intelligence, courage, and natural leadership ability. She had trained her whole life to be a ruler, studying everything from economics to military strategy. She could inspire loyalty in her followers and strike fear in her enemies. But none of that mattered because her body could not do the one thing that Vorten society demanded of its rulers. The transport ship that would take her to exile arrived the next morning. It was a small, ugly vessel, nothing like the grand ship she had traveled in as a princess. The crew treated her with distant respect, the kind shown to someone who had once been important, but was now just another passenger dock as the ship lifted off from the capital world. Zara pressed her face to the small porthole and watched her home disappear below. She was leaving behind everything she had ever known, everyone she had ever loved, and the only life she had ever imagined living. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before her, dark and cold and endless. Her destination was a world called Zarian 7, a mining planet on the edge of Vorten space. The briefing materials described it as a place for exiles, criminals, and outcasts, the perfect prison for a disgraced princess. The planet produced just enough valuable minerals to justify keeping it in the Empire, but not enough to make it important. It was, in every way, the opposite of the glorious future she had been promised, but as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying her toward her new life, Zara made herself a promise. She would not disappear quietly into exile. She would not waste away in self-pity and regret. If the Empire wanted to judge her worth by her ability to bear children, then she would prove them wrong. She would find another way to leave her mark on the galaxy, another way to build a legacy that would outlast her body. She did not know then that her exile would put her in the path of a human soldier who would change everything she thought she knew about strength, worth, and the true meaning of legacy. She did not know that the greatest chapter of her life was just beginning, not ending. All she knew was that she would not give up, would not surrender to the fate that others had chosen for her. The stars outside her window seemed to pulse with possibility, and for the first time since receiving her diagnosis, Princess Zara felt something other than despair. She felt determination.